Have you ever stopped to really look at the woman who lives alone? Not the one who's frantically swiping on apps or crying into her wine, but the one who is genuinely at peace. She has no partner, no boyfriend, and here is the part that confuses people the most. She isn't even looking for one. When society sees her, it immediately tries to diagnose her. People whisper that she must be lonely, that she's probably suffered a devastating heartbreak, or that she simply ran out of options. They want to believe she is a victim of circumstance because the alternative is much more terrifying to the status quo. They're wrong. Her life isn't a tragedy or a cautionary tale. It is a deliberate deconstruction of every lie we've ever been told about what a woman's life is supposed to look like. From the time we are children, we are taught that a woman is a puzzle piece waiting for its match. We are told that our value is tied to our other half, and that a house without a man is just an empty shell. But when a woman chooses to be alone, she isn't getting lost in the woods. She is finally stepping out of them. She is reclaiming the territory of her own life. This isn't a flashy journey that gets rewarded with likes or public applause. In fact, it's often met with awkward questions and pitying looks at family dinners. But beneath that surface is a path of silence and internal strength that most people are too terrified to even imagine. It takes a massive amount of courage to stop seeking external validation and start trusting the voice inside your own head. There's a common misconception that this kind of woman is cold or broken, but that couldn't be further from the truth. She isn't cold, she's just tired. She's exhausted from years of burning herself at both ends to keep other people warm while they never bothered to help her carry the wood. She has spent enough time in partnerships where she did 100% of the emotional labor, only to be left drained and invisible. Now she has realized that her energy is a finite, precious resource. She has stopped being a public utility and started being a private sanctuary. She hasn't lost her ability to love. She has simply raised the price of admission to a level that requires actual effort and integrity. The reality is that a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole is one of the most threatening things in our society. Our entire world is built on the myth of emotional dependency, the idea that you are incomplete until you find someone else. When a woman stands up and says, "I am enough exactly as I am," she shatters that logic of control. She dismantles the idea that a woman needs to be saved, managed, or claimed. This creates a massive problem for the system because you cannot control a woman who isn't afraid of her own company. You cannot manipulate someone who is perfectly happy sitting in a quiet room by herself. Most men are conditioned to look for a woman who needs something: protection, financial security, or emotional grounding. When they encounter a woman who has already provided those things for herself, they don't know where they fit in. It's a blow to the ego of anyone who relies on being a hero to feel important. And for other women, seeing her can be equally unsettling. It's like looking into a mirror of power that reveals the chains they are still wearing. It forces people to ask themselves, am I with my partner because I love them, or because I'm terrified of what I'd find if I were alone? She doesn't have to say a word to challenge your entire lifestyle. Her existence is the argument. This level of freedom is a different kind of whole. It's not the wholeness of a perfect circle, it's the wholeness of a mountain. It's steady, it's unmoving, and it doesn't need anyone to tell it that it's beautiful. She has discovered that the most important relationship she will ever have is the one happening right now, in the silence of her own home, between her heart and her mind. She isn't waiting for her life to begin when a man walks through the door. She is already living it, and the door is locked from the inside, not to keep people out, but to ensure that anyone who enters knows exactly how much respect that space deserves. When you walk into her home, the first thing you notice isn't what's there, but what isn't. There is a profound silence, but don't mistake that for emptiness. To the outside world, a quiet house is a sign of a lonely life, but for her, It is a hard-won sanctuary. Most people are terrified of silence because when the noise of the world stops, the noise of the mind begins. They fill their lives with distractions, mediocre company, and constant chatter just to avoid hearing their own thoughts. But this woman has stopped running. She has turned her home into a sacred space where she can finally breathe. It's a place where she doesn't have to perform, explain herself, or manage anyone else's fragile ego. Of course, society has plenty of labels for a woman like this. They call her picky, arrogant, or difficult to reach. But those labels aren't about her. They are projections. When people see a woman who is comfortable in her own company, it triggers their own deepest fear of being alone. They assume she must have built a fortress to shut the world out because they can't imagine why anyone would want to be stuck with themselves. But they have it backward. She didn't build those walls to keep people out. She built them to keep herself in. She spent years being invaded by the needs, dramas, and expectations of others. Now she is the gatekeeper of her own peace. She has faced the ghosts that most people spend their entire lives sprinting away from. The pain of childhood wounds, the patterns of toxic attachments, and that desperate, hollow habit of begging for crumbs of affection. Her solitude isn't a sign of an open wound. It is the evidence of a scar that is finally completely healed. This shift isn't about being quote-unquote antisocial. It's about a massive upgrade in emotional maturity. To an immature observer, her boundaries look like distance. They see her lack of urgency to date, or her refusal to play modern dating games, as a sign that she's given up. In reality, she has just grown up. Maturity is incredibly scary to most people because it demands total truth and a real, grounded presence. She is no longer moved by charming princes, smooth talkers, or those shallow, curated Instagram story romances that look good in photos but feel empty in real life. She has outgrown the need for the spark that is actually just anxiety in disguise. She isn't looking for someone to save her, and she certainly isn't looking for a project to fix. She has traded the desperate, frantic urgency to be with someone for the quiet, steady power of being with herself. She has realized that the half-person looking for their other half narrative is a trap designed to keep people in codependent loops. She doesn't want to be completed by another person because she isn't a half. She is a whole. She is looking for something much rarer, reciprocity. She wants a connection where both people are already full, already grounded, and already aware of their own shadows. She wants to overflow alongside someone else who has also done the heavy lifting of inner work. Until she finds that, she is perfectly content to stay exactly where she is. She isn't waiting for her life to start. She is enjoying the life she has already built, knowing that any addition to her world must be at least as peaceful as the silence she has worked so hard to protect. When you look at this woman, you aren't just seeing someone who lives alone. You are seeing someone who lives by essence rather than convention. Most people spend their entire lives following a script written by someone else, checking off boxes like marriage, partnership, and social validation just to prove they exist. But she has opted out of that performance. She is living proof of the one thing society tries to convince us is impossible, that you can be truly, deeply happy without a witness. She doesn't need a partner to narrate her life, or a social media feed to validate her weekends. Her joy isn't a show put on for an audience. It is a private conversation between her and her soul. When people look at her and say, "You're just too picky," she doesn't get defensive. She simply smiles. She smiles because she understands a secret they don't. What the world calls picky is actually just the bare minimum of what she deserves. She has stopped negotiating for the basics, honesty, consistency, and respect, and has decided that if those aren't on the table, she isn't even pulling up a chair. This clarity does more than just protect her. It acts as a brutal mirror to everyone she encounters. Her presence alone tears the masks off the people around her. Men who feed on female insecurity feel threatened because they realize their old tactics of needing to be needed don't work on her. Women who are still trapped in the exhausting cycle of seeking approval feel a sharp pang of judgment, not because she is judging them, but because her freedom highlights their own chains. She isn't out there trying to start a fight or prove a point. She is just existing. But in a world that demands women be small, agreeable, and available, the simple act of being is a radical revolution. She has stopped living to please, to serve, or to fit into a mold. She lives to exist in her fullest, most authentic form, and that makes her the most dangerous kind of person, one who is truly free. This freedom has led her to create an entirely new standard for love. If she is walking alone today, it isn't because she is waiting or because she's been left behind. Every day she remains single is a conscious choice, and every no she gives to a mediocre connection is a profound act of self-respect. She has reached the life-changing realization that it is infinitely better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. She's been in those rooms before, the ones where you're sitting right next to someone but feel like you're 1,000 miles away. She's done with the lonely together trap. Her path isn't always a perfect, sunny, straight line. She has her nights of doubt and moments of nostalgia for a touch or a voice. But even in those quiet, heavy moments, she remains loyal to her own soul. She refuses to betray herself just to have a body in the bed next to her. The love she is open to now isn't a search for salvation. She doesn't need a man to rescue her from her life because she actually likes the life she has built. She isn't looking for someone to fill her empty spaces or fix her broken parts. When love finally does arrive, it won't be a missing puzzle piece. It will be a celebration. It will be two whole, complete individuals deciding that their lives are even more beautiful when shared. This new kind of love won't come to complete her. It will come to join her. It's the difference between needing a crutch to walk and finding someone who can keep up with your pace. She is waiting for an equal, a partner who has done the same grueling inner work and who understands that love is about expansion, not possession. This is your wake-up call. This story isn't just about some distant, mysterious woman. It is a reflection of the dormant strength living inside you right now. If these words feel like a physical weight in your chest, it's because you are tired. You are exhausted from shrinking your personality, your dreams, and your boundaries to fit into spaces that were always too small for you. You've been playing a character in your own life just to keep the peace or keep a partner, and your soul is finally screaming for air. Don't just listen to this and move on with your day. Act on this clarity. If you are ready for a love that doesn't demand you lose yourself in the process, the first step isn't finding the one. It's reclaiming your own space. It's falling in love with your own silence and setting a standard so high that only the most authentic presence can meet it. Share this with a woman who needs to be reminded that her power isn't in who she can attract, but in who she becomes when she stops trying to be anyone else. It's time to rewrite the narrative. Being whole isn't a destination you reach with someone else. It's the home you build within yourself.